They say you can't take it with you. But the ancient Egyptians sure tried. They filled their tombs with gold, jewels, and priceless artifacts, creating a tantalizing target for thieves throughout history. But what if I told you the most successful tomb robbers weren't shadowy figures from later centuries, but the very people who built the tombs themselves? Forget what you've seen in movies. The real story of tomb robbing in ancient Egypt is darker, more complex, and far more shocking than you can imagine. Let's journey back to the Valley of the Kings, the final resting place of pharaohs like Tutankhamun and Ramses the Great. Imagine vast, underground palaces designed to protect the king's body and treasures for eternity. These tombs were marvels of engineering, with hidden passages, false doors, and terrifying curses painted on the walls to ward off intruders. But these deterrents rarely worked. In fact, nearly every real tomb discovered in modern times had already been plundered in antiquity. So, who were these audacious thieves, and how did they get away with it? The answer is unsettling. The primary culprits were often the workers, priests, and even the officials entrusted with guarding these sacred sites. Think about it. Who knew the layout of the tombs better than the artisans who carved the corridors? Who knew the secret rituals and the exact location of the burial chamber better than the priests who performed the ceremonies? This was an inside job on a massive scale. We have incredible evidence for this from ancient papyri, like the famous Abbot Papyrus. This document is essentially an ancient police report from the reign of Ramses IX, detailing an official investigation into a massive tomb robbing scandal. It reads like a modern-day crime drama with accusations, interrogations, and even confessions extracted through torture. One confession, from a stonemason named Amenpanufer, is particularly chilling. He admitted to breaking into the tomb of a pharaoh, stripping the mummies of their gold amulets, and setting the coffins on fire to melt down the precious metals. He and his gang of 8 men systematically ransacked the tomb, dividing the loot among themselves. This wasn't a what-I'm thing, it was their profession. The motives were simple: greed and opportunity. During periods of economic hardship and political instability, the temptation of unimaginable wealth buried just beneath the desert sands was too strong to resist. The government's control would weaken, and the gangs of robbers would grow bolder. These weren't just petty criminals, they were organized syndicates. They had lookouts, specialists for breaking through stone, and a network for melting down and selling the stolen goods. The methods they used were both brutal and ingenious. They would often tunnel in from the side of a tomb, bypassing the heavily sealed main entrance. They worked by the dim light of oil lamps, the soot from which can still be seen on the ceilings of some violated tombs today. Once inside, it was a frenzy of destruction. They weren't archaeologists, they were treasure hunters. They ripped open sarcophagi, tore the linen wrappings off mummies, and smashed whatever they couldn't carry. For the ancient Egyptians, this was the ultimate desecration. Disturbing the mummy meant destroying the deceased's chance at eternal life. The robbers weren't just stealing gold, they were stealing immortality. The punishments for those caught were severe. The law prescribed brutal penalties, including impalement on a sharpened stake, a slow and agonizing death meant to serve as a gruesome warning to others. Yet, even this wasn't enough to stop them. The potential rewards were just too great. Some high-ranking officials were even in on the scheme, taking a cut of the profits and turning a blind eye to the desecration. It was a system of corruption that reached the highest levels of society. One of the most fascinating cases is the story of the royal mummy cache. By the time of the 21st dynasty, around 1000 BC, the situation was so out of control that the priests made a drastic decision. Under the cover of darkness, they began a secret operation. They entered the violated tombs of past pharaohs, including legends like Seti I and Ramses the Great. They gathered what was left of the royal mummies, stripped them of any remaining valuables to prevent further looting, rewrapped them in new linen, and labeled them with dockets identifying who they were. Then, They moved them all to a single, secret hiding place. For nearly 3,000 years, this secret held. The greatest kings of Egypt lay bundled together in an unmarked tomb, forgotten by the world. It wasn't until 1881 that this hiding place, known as DB320, was rediscovered by a local family who had been secretly selling artifacts from it for years. When archaeologists entered, they found a scene beyond belief, a treasure trove not of gold, but of history. The bodies of over 50 pharaohs, queens, and nobles, all piled together in a desperate, last-ditch effort to save them from the tomb robbers. This discovery fundamentally changed our understanding of the New Kingdom. It was the ultimate proof of the scale and severity of the ancient tomb robbing crisis. So why was Tutankhamun's tomb found almost perfectly intact? It was a fluke of history. His tomb was small and insignificant compared to others, and its entrance was quickly buried by the debris from the construction of a later, larger tomb. It was essentially hidden by accident. Even then, records show that robbers did break in at least twice shortly after his burial, but they were likely caught before they could do significant damage. Howard Carter's discovery in 1922 gave us a dazzling, but misleading, glimpse of what a royal burial was supposed to look like. The reality for almost every other pharaoh was one of violation and ruin. The dark side of tomb robbing is a story of human nature. It's about desperation, greed, and the conflict between sacred beliefs and worldly desires. It shows that even in a civilization obsessed with the afterlife, the immediate needs of the living often took precedence. The true treasure hunters of ancient Egypt weren't brave adventurers, but desperate workers, corrupt officials, and organized criminals who knew the secrets of the dead all too well. They risked gruesome punishments not for glory, but for gold, and in doing so, they became a crucial, if destructive, part of the history they were plundering. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this dive into the ancient underworld as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden stories from history. See you next time.